the younger players have been playing. They just,
Yep.
just because they're not used in crunch time, doesn't mean they're not getting used. Now, again, I still, there are times
The
when I'm like, hey,
NHL, Evan, the NHL is not a developmental league.
exactly.
It's
That's
not.
exactly what it is. That's the exact thing. And I think people, want to see these younger players. And again, we both do.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I believe this is episode number 52. I am your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Join for the premium newsletter. You get all NHL and Bruins content emailed directly to your inbox. I also file columns after every single Bruins game for Boston Sports Journal. Check it out for my Bruins work, along with Greg Bedard and Mike Giardi covering the New England Patriots. Great Celtics and Red Sox coverage there as well. My guest today, New England Hockey Journal's Evan Marinofsky, who is obviously covering the Bruins and all over the New England prep scene and the college scene. We'll talk to him a little bit about that in addition to the Bruins. Let's thank, though, our sponsors real quick, FanDuel Sportsbook. As always, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get going because the NFL playoffs are right around the corner. Boston Bruins regular season. The Celtics are rolling. Get involved. And let's also give a little love to Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Delicious meals done in 2 minutes, calorie-conscious, chef-made, good stuff. So go to Factor Meals and tell them Haggs sent you. All right, Evan. Let's just start off with the Boston Bruins. Won their 4th game in a row, beat the Columbus Blue Jackets 4-1. My biggest takeaway from this game and what I was writing about at Boston Sports Journal is just this game kind of highlighted that the Bruins, Don Sweeney's bargain basement signings from the summer continue to pay dividends. A lot of people rolled their eyes when the Bruins had to, sign a bunch of players to like 1 year, $1 million contracts, the James Van Riemsdykes and the Kevin Shattenkirks of the world. And a lot of people viewed it as a desperation move and just trying to like glue things together because they were in such dire salary cap straits with Krejci and Bergeron retiring, the, salary, the bonus overage penalty they had to pay because of them, and just being up against the cap that forced them to trade Taylor Hall and make all these signings. But James Van Riemsdyk, 3 points in last night's game. He's on pace for 16 goals, over 50 points. He's the 4th leading scorer on this Bruins team. Kevin Shattenkirk scored again last night, has 4 goals in his last 13 games, is now on pace for double-digit goals, which would be the first time he's done that since his great prime days with the St. Louis Blues. And Dan Heinen picked up off the scrap heap, wasn't even given a contract, had to sing for his supper in training camp, earned it on a tryout. He's also on pace for double-digit goals. He scored his last night as well. And really, for my money, last night, Trent Frederick, JVR, and Danton Heinen, that third line that they put together was the best line going for them last night. So just how impressed are you with the way these players have performed? Yes, they're not starring every night. Of course, they're riding and they're counting on Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak to carry the offense a lot of nights. And we saw that, especially during the 4-game losing streak. They were basically the only ones scoring. But by and large, the reason this team is in the place that they're in is because these veteran players have stepped up and played up to, the resumes that they brought when they signed in Boston.
Yeah, it's funny. You think back to the offseason, and a lot of people were, as you said, disappointed that there were no big signings or big trades. I think a lot of people expected the Bruins to jump out and immediately replace Bergeron and Krejci, and that was never possible. And, obviously, like, when a team like the Red Sox does the bargain bin stuff, you roll your eyes, and it's like, you guys just, there's no salary cap. You're rich.
Right.
Why are you doing this? But there is a salary cap, obviously, in hockey, and the Bruins aren't cheap. They pay their players. This is not an issue of that. They just didn't have a lot of salary space. You mentioned the overages. They had those this year. And I think this hits at a bigger thing in free agency. It is smarter, I think, to go for these lower tier signings like a Van Riemsdyk, who throughout his whole career produces. James Van Riemsdyk is a very solid veteran. He's always been that way. Is he the same guy that he was in Toronto many years ago? No, but he's a solid veteran who, with the right players, is going to contribute. Kevin Shattenkirk, obviously.
And Van Riemsdyk was brought in, ostensibly to be the net front guy in the power play. He's on pace for double-digit power play goals. That's really he's been a weapon on the power. He's done Van Riemsdyk more than anybody else, I think, on this team that they brought in as a free agent has done exactly what they thought he was going to do and exactly what they got him for. And as long as he stays healthy, I think he's going to be one of the best free agent signings of this entire season when we look
Oh,
at
yes.
value bang for the buck and what you got out of the player you invested. So I think you really have to tip your cap to the NHL scouts, Don Sweeney, the Bruins management, especially for that one, for bringing that guy in. That has been an excellent signing for them.
And for getting him for $1 million.
I know.
$1 million, Haggs. Like, that's where it's surprising. I think even if he was making 3, we would be sitting here like, oh, this is a great signing.
Yeah.
So he's given you that. Shattenkirk was a little shaky at the beginning of the year, but like Jim Montgomery said after last night's game, he's getting used to how they play. He's starting to understand their systems better, and he's looked pretty good with Grizzly. I've not minded that pairing, if that's what they're gonna roll with going forward.
And I thought it was interesting that he talked too about how he kind of got in some bad habits with Anaheim because they were playing in the D zone so much and because they were defending so much. He kind of got away from some of his offensive tendencies and sort of, making high risk plays or trusting that his teammates were going to have his back if he, was a little more aggressive and assertive offensively, where he didn't feel like he could do that as much with Anaheim. And I think it's really the discovery that this is a much better team that he's playing on and he doesn't have to worry about defending so much has really freed him up to be the player that he was earlier in his career. And you put the skills and the smarts together with that mindset, and he's on pace now for 11 goals and 25 points. That's an excellent season for a defenseman, and I think he can even get more than that as he goes forward and continues to sort of make plays and doing what he's doing, considering the first 20 games of the year, whatever it was, he didn't really do much offensively.
And if that's your third pair defenseman who you're going to roll out there as not someone, probably not getting the top matchups, someone that you don't have super high offensive expectations for in the first place, and you're getting that production. Yeah, I think it's encouraging. So I mean, again, he's another one that, like, when Forbert, returns and all that, like, obviously, we'll see sort of how the chips fall back there. But, and then Heinen's another, like, I've said a bunch, are they, if Danton Heinen's a top 6 forward, I think we talked about this. Are they, cup contenders? Probably not. But I think having Danton Heinen where he can slot it into your top 9, especially on that third line or wherever you need him, especially if it's in the bottom 6, you have something with him. Like, he's going to contribute. He's a reliable veteran. Jim Montgomery likes him. Like, to me, I've been thoroughly impressed with how those 3 have acclimated: JVR, Heinen, and Shattenkirk. And, again, are they going to produce every night? No, they're not. But I think when they do, and they have a lot in the last, especially 4 games since the Christmas break, you see what you kind of have. And I'm very curious to see if this continues. If they have kind of sort of, they're hitting their stride at the right time. Especially, I mean, like, JVR's passing is so good. I think he's a great passer. Like,
much better than I thought it was or had an idea of what it was. But I think when you watch him every single day, you realize how smart he is, how well he sees the ice, how well he makes like little plays in the offensive zone. And he's not just a big body in front that can finish plays around the net. He is definitely somebody that can set up his teammates and has great vision. You're absolutely, that might be the biggest surprise for me of any player on this team this year is JVR's passing ability and his ice vision, especially in the offensive zone. Like, he's not obviously a great sort of rush player, a great transition player going through the neutral zone with speed, all that stuff. But when it turns into, like, to use a basketball analogy, like the half court game, where they're just playing half court offense in the offensive zone and they're cycling or making little plays in the offensive zone, he's excellent. He's fantastic.
And he can slow the game down.
Really good old man hockey. Like, not to insult him or anything, but he plays like that. Like when you play in a men's league game and some
men's league, I was going to say men's league, you have a little more time and space. He's good at creating time and space, and he's good at slowing the game down. Just something that I think a lot of players, young and old, struggle with is like, how do I kind of let the game come to me? And he's been great at that this year. And also, by the way, he's kind of been on that third line with, it was Coyle and Frederick before. Now it's sort of Frederick, Heinen, or whoever they have there. Like, it's not like he's been with Marchand and Zaka and Pasternak. Like,
Right.
and on the power play, he is obviously, but at 5-on-5, he's with he's elevating guys around him. Like, he's elevating Trent Frederick. That pass to him on that goal against Columbus was dynamite. I mean, and props to Frederick for finishing. Props to Frederick, who's been, really good for a good portion of time now. And I also wonder, like, Coyle has moved in with Marchand and DeBrusk, and they're solid. But I love the JVR Coyle Frederick line. I would love to see that kind of come together at some point again when Patra returns, if that's possible. Like, I would be curious to continue to see them progress together, because I think that line, we've said it all along, I think that line would be a force come the postseason. By the way, not to get off track, speaking of big guys in front of the net, did you see the Nick Ritchie video from over in, I think, like Finland?
I haven't seen the video, but I heard about it. I heard it was like a Hulk smash situation.
It was bad. It was just a guy was battling with him in the corner, and he just grabs the guy by his head, throws him down, takes his helmet off, and just starts wailing on his head as he's down on the ice. And he only got an 8-game suspension. I was shocked. But Nick is thriving over in overseas. So
hey, I think that's something Bruins fans wanted to see more of when he was here with Boston, was that kind of Hulk situation where he just loses his mind and starts like intimidating and throwing people around.
He probably feels so superior over there. He's like, I'm a first-round NHL pick. You guys suck. I don't even know what his stats are. I don't think they're that good, but I thought that was incredible.
He just wanted to take the holiday week off, so he's like, I'm just going to get suspended for the next stretch of games.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll hopefully still get paid, but I'll take it.
Yeah, maybe I could just fly home.
Yeah, exactly.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
One thing I did was interesting, just thinking about all these players, is forecasting later on in the year. The Bruins 6th man is going to be extremely tough this year, I think. Or 7th player, excuse me, not 6th man. The 7th player award is going to be really difficult. You've got Danton Heinen, you've got Kevin Shattenkirk, you've got James Van Riemsdyk. I would expect one of those players is going to get it. It's going to be like, usually they give it to a young player, and maybe it'd be like a Mason Lowry or a Matt Poitras. Actually Johnny Beecher might end up being the one that would be the most sort of appropriate when push comes to shove at the end of the year, depending on how Lowry performs and how long he stays up. But I think it's going to go to one of those veterans, one of those guys that's gone above and beyond. I think JVR might be a great choice for something like that if he continues to produce it the way he is right now.
Yeah, he's a good one. I mean, I was just writing these down while you were saying that. Like, you mentioned Heinen, JVR, Beecher. I would throw in maybe Frederick too. That's another option. Morgan Geekie could be an option, the way that he's slotted. I mean, I know he was hurt for a little bit of time, but if he continues to kind of do what he's been doing, filling in the top 6, down on the third line, like, that's another one. So they have a lot. I would go with JVR. I think he's been I think when my prediction is when the season ends, he'll be the most consistent.
And he's like the true spirit of the 7th player.
Yes.
Going 7th man, going back to, the old days when they used to like give it to veterans like that went above and beyond.
Yeah. So I think he would be a good choice for it come the end of the year. But like, again, you could throw Patra in the mix there. You mentioned Beecher. Like, I think he's a really good one. We have not. I know they've moved him out of there at times, or for a game or two just to kind of reset him. But like, he's been a solid presence on that 4th line. Like, haven't had to worry about him. And even when it's, Lauko, Beecher, and Steen, they're able to kind of hold their own. So to me, I think they, it's going to be a tough call, but I think as of now, I'd probably go with Van Riemsdyk.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement on that one. World Juniors still going on. Canada is out. Team USA is a friggin' juggernaut. They're just
Oh my God.
destroying people. That BC line has been nasty when they're playing together. But they just don't even look like they're challenged by any of these teams they're playing. It'll be interesting to see what happens if they get into another close game. Now that it's do or die in elimination. They did have what? Would they have an overtime game against, was it Czechia maybe?
I think they did. I
Yeah.
think the US did. What's funny is I was reading, and this hits at a bigger point. I was reading in The Athletic. I think it was Dom Lecizen or someone wrote a story on the United States when they do the World Cup of Hockey in 2025 could be better than Team Canada, which in 2016 wasn't the case at all. Wasn't even close. And you just look at and they didn't even include Ryan Leonard or Will Smith or Gabe Perreault or I don't even think they included Cutter Gauthier on those teams.
Yeah.
But just the caliber of hockey in America and the talent that's being churned out. Right now, I mean, in the NHL, I would say the Canadians probably have the best defenseman in Cale Makar. But after that, the Americans hold the advantage by a lot. Adam Fox, McAvoy, Quinn Hughes. Now Brock Faber, who I love, is moving into that. He's a phenomenal defenseman, and I just think that the talent and I was talking to James Hagens last night, actually, he's going to be in our next magazine, and just and he almost made that World Junior team. And if he did, I don't think he would have been talking to me on a Tuesday night at at 7:00. But it goes back to the talent that the US has and has coming is so good and competes with Canada. And I think at some point, obviously this World Juniors, America will finish higher, but in general, I think Team USA is sort of on that continued track. And Canada's not getting worse. I think the US has just gotten so good.
Yeah, and I think the US has really put an emphasis on it too, whereas it's always been important in Canada, but I think it's become much more important in the US to be a power and to maximize the potential that it's always had. And the American development model that USA Hockey uses, to train their coaches, to develop their players. There's a nationwide system in place that they train the coaches a certain way. They have a general overarching philosophy for the sport in every state and in every association. That stuff has turned out great players. That is developing players and their skill levels at a level that I think is above and beyond other nations. You see the most skilled players coming from USA. They're not always, I think, the best. They're not always the grittiest players. They're not always.
And for a long time, they were. For a long time, the Americans were gritty, but they didn't have the skill. Now it's completely flipped.
Now they're not always the grittiest players. They're certainly not always the most instinctual players sometimes, I think, from a traditional standpoint. But just the actual level of skill that they have, shooting, passing, stick handling, all of that stuff. And starting to play together as a team, you look at them and you see them compared to some other countries, and I think they are a level above. So as far as that has gone with developing the skill level of players, I think the American system and what USA Hockey has put into place has been a great success. We've talked about it before, how different states are doing it at different levels of success, and is Massachusetts still where they need to be, because Minnesota seems to really be distancing themselves as far as how much they're producing, and there are reasons for that we talked about. But I think in general, the US, and especially the markets like St. Louis, Arizona, Dallas, Anaheim, these different places that were never hockey spots before that produce talent, are all of a sudden churning out these great athletes that are playing hockey too. It's also part of Gary Bettman's sort of master plan of putting hockey in non-traditional markets, and they're starting to bear fruit with all the players that we're seeing all over the country that are being produced.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was talking to James Hagens' dad, so for people who don't know, James Hagens is a stud on the national team on the U.S. development program. BC commit, likely will be the number one pick in 2025. Very, very comparable to like Jack Hughes as a center. I mean, he's a phenomenal player,
Yeah.
vision, passing, all that. And his
And I
dad
should
was,
say, like with Hagen, sorry to interrupt, but with Hagens, with Cole Iserman, with these players that didn't make the World Juniors team, this Team USA this year, I think you can see now why with the way
yes,
that they're playing and that the way that they're rolling teams. I was a little critical of Team USA for not taking some of these other players when Team Canada took Max Celebrini when they didn't have to, and like
Mhm.
some of the other stuff that was going on. But I think over time, I think we've seen that they probably made the right choice. It all depends, obviously, on what happens in these medal games. But
And they'll be there next year. That would be
yeah,
my guess. But he was saying that when James started out in youth hockey, that was when the ADM model kicked off, and
yeah,
like that was a point of emphasis and edge work and passing and small area games and all
yep,
those things, and that's bearing fruit. You're seeing that now. One thing I will say though, because I agree with you that the Americans might be a little less gritty, but you know who has that full package of grit, skill, shot? Ryan Leonard,
yeah,
who's
yeah,
a BC guy, Washington Capitals draft pick. Like that kid is going to be legit when it comes to the NHL because he's got that well-roundedness of he's a tough SOB and he can shoot the hell out of the puck. And I think that though that combination is going to work really well, especially with the Capitals, because he's going to have Tom Wilson in his ear,
yeah.
that stuff. But yeah, I'm very curious to see how the U.S. does in these next couple days because they look good. They look real good. BC's got to be pretty happy. BC's
Yeah,
top.
they are. They're loaded. All their players are playing well. Like this is a good experience for them. They're going to come back full of confidence when they go back to the heights for the second half of the year. And really, honestly, when it comes to college hockey, all feels right in the world when BU and BC are actually like legit national
Yes.
talents and going to be in the tournament at the end of the year. But going back to the World Juniors in general, Team Canada loses
Mhm.
heartbreaking fashion at the end of the third
Yeah.
period.
What a
Uh,
goal. That was like a fluke, like a mini
it,
hockey goal.
it was a weird goal. That goalie did not have a good game, the Team Canada goalie. He let up a couple
No.
bad ones early in the game. The last one wasn't his fault, but the fact that they were where they were in the third period kind of was his fault. And the team in general did not have a great start. Celebrini was obviously great. Patra was up and down in this tournament. He certainly wasn't dominant. I thought he was good in that final game. He assisted on one of the goals. He had a lot of chances. I thought he was generating a lot, but he didn't play that way throughout the tournament. You heard some of the, oh, it's the big ice. Oh, it's a jet lag from coming over. Or like, it was tough adjustment from the NHL to going back to World Juniors. And, there's some of that. But I don't know that he played fine. He was fine. I don't think he was bad by any means, but he wasn't exactly dominant either, like some might have expected him to be. And I don't know if he's that kind of player in general anyway. I think he's more of a complementary playmaking sort of player. He's not going to be a Celebrini where he's just going to take over
No.
games and score a ton of goals. But my question being now that the tournament is over, Patra's going to come back. It's going to be interesting to see how he's going to fit in and where they're going to put him in and how many days they're going to let him rest before they put him into the lineup. And, if they put him down in Providence for any kind of a conditioning stint before they sort of bring him up and, how they approach this whole situation now that they're on the other side of it. And he's going to be re-entering, the team. And is he even going to go on the West Coast trip that's coming up? I think they're going to like Arizona, Colorado, Vegas, places like that. Is he going to stay behind in Providence while they go on that trip? Merkelov is up. Does he go back down when Patra comes in? There's a lot of moving parts here, and I'm interested to see how the Bruins are going to approach it.
Yeah, I am also curious because as we mentioned with those seventh player awards, you have a lot of veteran or like Trent Frederick age type players. So not like I wouldn't say Trent Frederick's a veteran, but he's obviously older and way more experienced than a Patra or a Merck.
Yep.
So you have those guys down there. So right now, obviously you got Coyle, Geeky, Frederick as your, at least on Wednesday night, where you're top three centers, right? So like Coyle's going to stay in the top six. they've liked Zaka on the wing. Do they keep Geeky in the middle there? Do they try Patra? Like, I'm curious about that. And then if Patra is going to go down to that third line, like Heinen's been playing well, Van Riemsdyk's been playing well, Frederick's been playing well. Like, do you move Frederick back to the wing? Do you put Patra back in there? What do you do with Danton Heinen? Like, I am curious what they do. I completely agree with you. I don't think if Patra comes back and he's slow or anything, I still am hesitant to blame the World Juniors for that being a reason why. Like,
Oh no, I think it was a fine experience for him. I don't think it's going to be a Lysell situation where, it's going to be a turning point towards a sort of downturn in his season, or his performance is going to suffer at all because of it. I think it was a good experience for him overall, even though they lost and it was a disappointing ending. I think putting young players like that on that stage and then in that environment ends up being long-term a benefit to them, and I think it will be for him. I'm just curious to see how he's going to fit, if they're going to keep him at center, if they may start to try some of these players or even him at wing a little bit, and move him around a little, and to see exactly how he's going to fit in the second half of the year, especially with Conor Geeky playing a lot better and looking pretty good in the middle. There's also the fact that the Bruins have been absolutely horrendous in the faceoff circle for a lot of these games recently at center, all the way down the line, and how that's going to shake out. And if that changes what they're going to need at the deadline, where they're going to need somebody that can win faceoffs in big moments. Charlie Coyle could obviously win faceoffs at big moments. We've seen him do that. He won a faceoff that led to a goal a couple games ago after he'd been like 0-for-7 or 0-for-8 in the game. But he's going to be steady and okay in the faceoff circle. But I think everybody else in the second half of the year, as games have tightened up a little bit, have been really lacking. And that they've been able to win games despite it, but that's going to become an issue come playoff time. But just in general, like, I think put it this way. I don't think Patra's going back to juniors. I think that's already been established. I think that, Don Sweeney already said that's not going to happen. I don't think they're going to do that to this kid. I think he's going to stick around. They made a commitment to him. That's just the right thing to do. And I do think he'll be in and out of the lineup. I just wonder if it's going to continue to be, he sits every like fourth or fifth game, and it's sort of a rotation, so to speak, until he really either starts to take, seize and grab hold of a position and look like he's going to be the guy he was in the first, month or two of the season, or if it just becomes sort of a rotational thing where he's a part of the mix. But you need to keep him in there playing, obviously.
And so this is the thing. It goes back to this, and you see how I saw a lot of people on Twitter being like, "Oh, why is Georgi Markulov not playing in the third period?" and this and that. First of all, like with the Markulov thing, you got to earn. I think you got to earn the right to play in the third period.
He's been fine, but not great. He's been fine. Like, he hit a post. He's done some decent things. I think he's played pretty good 200-foot hockey. But I wouldn't say he stood out in any of the games that he played to the point where they need to keep him when Patra comes back. I think he's going back to Providence, and that's fine. He got a little taste. He goes back to Providence, and then when he's more ready to be a little more dominant the next time around.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to these younger players. Like, Beecher's stuck on that fourth line for pretty much the entire year.
Yeah,
but like you look at like a Patra. And there was some questions about his usage kind of right before he went to World Juniors. The Bruins are in first in the Atlantic. Like, they points wise, they are a Stanley Cup contender.
Yes.
And Jim Montgomery's got to go with the guys he trusts most in those big situations. And It's okay if a 19-year-old kid is not a guy that you quite trust yet. And I know that people want to see Patra. I want to see Patra. I think you and I both agree that this year was kind of supposed to be, hey, what do you have in the younger players? And you've seen that. The younger players have been playing. They just, just because they're not used in crunch time doesn't mean they're not getting used. Now, again, I still, there are times
the NHL, Evan, the NHL is not a developmental league.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. That's the exact thing. And I think people, want to see these younger players. And again, we both do. I'm not anti-kids or anything. I just think in crunch times of games, when you need 2 points, are you going to go with a guy like Coyle or Geeky, who are older and been around more, maybe a little more reliable, or are you going to go with a younger player? Like Montgomery's going with the older player because that's the higher chance of winning. And I know that there have been times this year, especially at the end of games, when the older guys have blown it, especially in those final minutes. Like I acknowledge that, but I'm just saying from a probability perspective and all that, like that's I go back to, it's good that they're playing, but you can't expect them to be out there in the final minute of every game.
No. And that's, you're not going to see them out there in the playoffs. And so what you're seeing now is the guys that they are going to have out there in the playoffs in these moments, they're out there now getting reps. So they're ready come playoff time, and they have a little more experience doing it because they've had to even the veteran guys, the geekies, some of the other players, they're not used to being out there in the final minute of games. That used to be like David Krejci, Patrice Bergeron territory, Brad Marchand. Like they were the guys that were always out there in those situations. And now you're opening that up to other players being in those situations. And, Jim Montgomery talked about this earlier in the year, that part of the reason they were struggling to protect 1-goal leads in the third periods is because there was a lot of new guys, especially at forward, that were out there in these spots that hadn't been in these situations before. And I think you're starting to see them get better, whether it was scoring a couple empty net goals a couple games ago in a situation where they'd really struggled earlier in the year, whether it was closing out a game against Columbus last night where they were really strong in the third period, I thought, and it was one of their better third periods. You're starting to see that improvement because they've been put in those situations, those veterans, and they're starting to get better. You're not going to see Matt Patra out there in the final minute of Game 7 of a Stanley Cup playoff series.
You're not? What?
Why would you expect to see it now if you're not going to see it then? Like, he's going to have to get to that point. Maybe 3 years from now, he will be that guy, and you work into it. But at the NHL level, it's definitely not a developmental league, and especially in the Eastern Conference, with it being as close as it is with all these teams right now, nobody's running away with any of these playoff spots. The Bruins don't have that much of an advantage right now, points wise, over wild card teams. They could very easily be overtaken if they went into a extended tailspin. So I think the points are very important for them right now. So I think your point is right on.
Do have Factor Meals to help us out. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit when it does get busy, when it does get crazy, when we do need a quick meal. They fuel you up fast with flavorful and nutritious ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. Takes less than 2 minutes to cook them. They're fresh, never frozen, meals ready in 2 minutes, like I said. They have calorie-conscious options, going upscale with some of the things they're offering now, like surf and surf meal options, roasted garlic filet mignon, and shrimp and Cajun spiced shrimp and salmon, which is like right in my wheelhouse. This is the kind of stuff I'm all about. So it's got everything for everybody. There's 34 plus chef prepared, dietitian approved weekly options for meals. You can get snacks, you can get breakfast items. Like it's a great deal. So if you want to get Factor Meals, go to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use the code Haggs50 to get 50% off of your first box. It's a great deal. I've tried it. It's fantastic. I recommend it to you. We love these ready to make meal kits, especially when we're on the go with our kids. So one more time, that's factormeals.com/Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. You won't be sorry if you go to Factor Meals. It gets the Haggs thumbs up seal of approval.
All right, let's finish this off with the Twitter question of the week. Still not sponsored. Still looking for a sponsor out there. This can be your space right here. Brand X presents the Twitter question of the week. Send a note into Pucks with Haggs podcast to get that taken care of. This is from Cam071109. For a team that's ranked second to last for our prospect system, and the last time I checked, they were ranked dead last by the Athletic a couple years in a row. So I think this guy's even given them more credit than they deserve, or that they got. I would say we're doing okay. Lowry, Potsy, and Beecher on the roster. Merkulov getting NHL time. Now Lysell putting up a point per game in the AHL. Busty a top 3 goal in the AHL for 2 years now. And 2 World Junior players. And we should give Dans Lokmelis a little credit too. Like,
yes,
a couple
UMass
goals
guy
for Latvia and represented UMass and the Bruins really well in that game against Team USA, that torture chamber that they were in. He scored the only 2 goals for Latvia. So, we've talked about this a little earlier. with the advent of Lowry and Beecher and Patra on this year's team, I think we view the Bruins prospect system very differently now because we've got 3 legit NHL players and guys that are making impacts, coming out of the prospect system and really fast forwarding their development to get to the NHL. And I think it really changes the way you look at the Bruins prospect system right now.
It does. It does. And I think they've developed those guys well. You look at a guy like Lowry, who, at Ohio State, I don't think they play the strictest systems out there.
Yeah.
And, a guy who only recently became a defenseman, and the Bruins are turning him into a better 200-foot two-way defenseman. And you look at Patra and the way that he plays and the way that they kind of, even though Beecher did not have the highest ceiling, obviously you can criticize the pick as much as you want, but there's nothing wrong with being an everyday bottom 6 forward in the NHL who plays with speed and can do a number of things well. So like, to me, do I put the Bruins? Do I say, oh, they're a top 10 prospect pool now? No, I don't. But I think they're better than we give them credit for. I think the other thing is what they were always lacking with that group was like the high end guys, and I think those national prospect rankings, the guys like the Pronmans of the world and like Scott Wheeler, the guys who look at every prospect pool, I think they put a high emphasis, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but my guess is they put a high emphasis on the top talent, guys that are picked high, guys that have, the high end skill and this and that. And the Bruins prospect pool didn't really have that, but they do have guys that can contribute valuable at a high level at the NHL level. And I think that's a big thing. That's a testament to the Bruins picking, because again, Beecher was end of the first. Patra and Lowry they were second round picks, right? So like, these are not they didn't trade up to get these guys in the top 5. And I think it also hits home and I've said this to you a lot this year, they need to get back into the first and second round. You need to find a way to get back in, because you don't have them the next couple years, and you've been picking spotty the last bunch of years. You're giving away first round picks, which again made sense. I'm not saying it didn't, but you do need to replenish them, because now that Lowry seems to be up here, and Lysell at some point should be up, and Patra's been up, and Beecher's stuck, and that, like, you do need to replenish Providence and that team. So I'm curious to see what they do with that.
You do need to continue hitting on guys like Merkulov, Bussy, players
the free
like
agent
that.
Signings, yeah.
Farinacci, another one. The guys that you're getting in either free agency or that you're waiting out, draft rights to expire, and then you're signing them out of college. Whatever it is, they've done a very good job of that. I think they've been one of the best NHL teams as far as getting those players and tracking them and making sure they can come that way. And that's a good way to supplement when you don't have the first and second round picks. But to your point, I think at this point now, they're looking at a time where they need to recoup some of those picks, and they need to stop trading them away and sort of build up again to get to that point. And I think, they've picked the best fruit out of their prospect system now, and those guys are in the NHL. And it's going to look pretty bare again if they don't start like replenishing that with some of these picks. But that being said, Luck Mellis looks really good. Oscar Jelvik is having a very good season at Boston College, and I think he's been a guy that looked good in development camp too. They have a couple of guys coming, but nobody that's going to wow you. And they need to start getting back into the high-end business of drafting players in the first and second round.
Yeah, that's the big thing. I think, it's fine to get the Farinacci. He's like a guy that I'm a little worried about is like a Mark McLaughlin, because there has not been much from him this year. No one ever expected him to do more than a third or fourth line role. So it's not like, oh, he's not doing, but he just had like, there's so much competition in this organization in that bottom 6 that like, do you move him for a change of scenery at some point? And you're not getting a first or second or third for him, but like, do you just kind of give him a new change of scenery?
Yep.
But I agree with you. I think that they do need to get back into getting guys that can potentially play in the top 6. And you have that with Patra. I'm not saying like you don't, but you need more of those guys, because they don't all hit. You're seeing it with Lysell right now. There are holes, and that's okay. Not every first, second round pick is going to thrive in the NHL. But the Bruins have just been, very fortunate, and good for them that like Lowry and Patra seem to be trending that way.
Yep. Bruins prospect system, not awesome, but probably not as bad as some other teams. Certainly not the last in the NHL, dead last as they've been ranked by the Athletic the last couple of years. So let's give the Bruins scouting staff, management staff, a little golf clap. There you go, Evan. A little more credit than they were given the last 2 summers.
Hey, speaking of the prospect pool, did you see Diver when he was on Bruins Beat with me with his setup? I don't know what he was
like he's like in a Barker lounger or something. He's done that with me before too.
He's recliner, and someone replied like, I wish I could be as comfortable as Diver. He just recliner, and then the laptop is just kind of like here.
Yep.
And it's just that's it, and it's so funny. And I was like, man, I should start doing that. Why
I think it's the perfect setup.
Right.
I think he looks very comfortable when he's talking Bruins prospects, as he should be, because
I completely agree.
He is the guy that watches them all the time. A guy that watches a ton of hockey at all levels, Evan Marinofsky. Evan, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. Let's thank our sponsors real quick. FanDuel Sportsbook, $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Download the app. It's very easy to use. Spreads, player props, over under, so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get going with betting on all of these seasons, because the playoffs are starting for the NFL. Everything else is in midstream. It's good stuff. Also, Factor Meals. Let's thank them. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Head to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use code Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. Evan Marinofsky, thank you very much. I'm sure Finn and I will see you at the rink soon. Appreciate the time.
You will.
Excellent. I like that.